We're really appreciative for you to come back, and we've got an amazing panel. Wafa, thank you for helping us here, and we're excited to do this. So first of all, we have Dr. Sonal Haerter, and she's an internist at St. Joe's. She's really on the front lines. She's a teaching member of their faculty, and I think has just a great perspective on what's going on. Jeff Nielsen, land acquisitions at Toll Brothers. What a dynamic leader in the real estate industry, and we're just lucky that you're here with us today. Bill Nassikas, our favorite hotels in the Valley Ho, Sanctuary, Castle Hot Springs, Mountain Shadows, where I just a great business leader here in the state. Michael Davidson, the head of Gen Next, a great CEO, entrepreneurial organization nationally and internationally. We appreciate you coming out. And Dan Gauthier from our office, who's a transactional lawyer and has been really working with the PPP programs and Small Business Administration and has some updates for us. And then, of course, the moderator, co-moderator with me, who can never get a word in, Court Rich, my law partner. Thank you for being here. So I will say this week, the new normal, whatever that is, seems very interesting. I know many of you have commented to me throughout the week about how you've been getting used to this staying at home thing. And I can tell you I am not used to the staying at home thing. I did get to go in person to a live zoning hearing yesterday for Meritage Homes in Pinal County. And it was like the greatest thing. I got to interact with human beings and the Planning Commission, and it was weird because there was not many people in the room, but I just loved that. So Dr. Haerter, can you tell us from the front lines, from a medical perspective, where are we in this thing? What are you seeing? What kind of time frame do you think until Arizona can get a little bit more back to normal?
So Jordan, that is where a lot of medical community is struggling, because think about this as a war that we kind of knew, but we didn't know all the details of what we were facing, right? So we have some statistics that are coming out of China and Spain and Italy, and we are kind of following that. And looks like based on that, there are some areas in the United States that we see flattening of the curve, but let's not fall for that, because we still have a lot of things unanswered. We still do not have mass testing. We do not have testing for, detecting the infection or even detecting immunity to the infection. So it's actually hard to say, at what point do we all feel comfortable relaxing or going back to somewhat of a normal. Our baseline has changed, right? And I don't think we are going back to how things were for a while. But what does that mean? I mean, when can we start some other businesses? That's all very, very kind of almost blurry right now from the medical standpoint. I can tell you that I miss seeing my patients in person. I do some Zoom meetings, and I see some sick people in the clinic, and we are trying to prevent these people from going to the emergency room if possible. But it's hard to say. It's hard to say. It's state by state. It depends on density and what testing is available for different cities and different states.
Thank you. And I think we'll talk to you a little bit about some suggested advice that you have, because I've talked to you personally about it, and it's very, very interesting. I want to go to Bill Nassikas, mainly because all I've been doing with my children is dropping them off at your Mountain Shadows golf course every day. And that's really the only thing that we do for joy. So thank you for that. But how's from a hotel perspective, what is going on? Explain that. And what do you, and we do want to look at optimistically what's in the future.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you. Thanks for having me on the panel today. But a bigger thank you from me and what staff has left at Mountain Shadows for dropping your kids off. If you'd like, we can go pick them up.
Perfect.
With gloves. We're an all-service community for sure. But I guess where the hotel business comes from. There's an old saying: when you open a hotel, you throw away the key to the front door. It's 24/7. Needless to say, it's a people business. And right now, all those things get thrown out of the window. We don't have really virtually any people to take care of other than who's on the golf course and the few that are traveling and looking for some sort of safe and conditioned lodging. But with that in mind, we've morphed from the service business, serving people, to supporting the community. And ironically, you mentioned golf, Jordan, but ironically, golf is kind of survived the cut. And with that in mind, has been deemed an essential service. But we're really seeing a great deal of what I would call community outreach, people supporting us, people supporting those that are working for us. And we're looking at plans to slowly reopen. We know it's going to be a bit of a trickle when the doors do start to reopen. We're totally dependent from a national perspective on Lyft, and we know that the airlines are facing probably a bigger problem than we are here at home. But that has to kind of kick in first, even though the drive market and the locals will give us some support as we re-enter the real world in terms of taking care of people.
Bill, let me ask you a question. So if right now my family wants to kick me out of the house because they can't take it anymore, can I come stay at your hotels, or are any of them open? And can I come eat dinner at any of them? I mean, can I take out dinner, or what's the status on that?
Yeah, that's certainly the operative question all of the hotels have been asking them and their staff. We have committed to staying open. So we do have guests that are staying at the hotel. For the most part, our guests are in for the long haul. One unique aspect of our properties is that we have full-time residents. And so with that, we're in the support mode one way or the other, whether it's security, maintenance, and food and beverage. So yes, to answer your question specifically, you could stay at our property for 1 night, for 5 nights, for 30 nights, and but with severely limited services.
Do you have people from out of state who have literally come here and are staying for months or indefinitely? So yeah, at this point,
we do, especially in the, for instance, sanctuary. We have 4 and 5 bedroom homes up on the mountain, and we have families that have checked in. The homes are pretty self-sufficient. Needless to say, they've got kitchens. They all have their own swimming pool, which has become a bit of a challenge. If you're staying in the hotels, back the first week of April, the governor mandated that all of our pools close to guests other than the private pools. So yeah, we have people staying indefinitely right now, and we'll be looking for the Arizona sunshine, I guess.
Thanks, Bill. And then just one last question on that. If I want to take out food from Sanctuary or Valley Ho, I can go do that still.
Yeah, each hotel operates a little differently. Valley Ho has the most robust takeout and delivery program based on the neighborhood around it. Sanctuary, not so much, just trying to maintain in-house guests' needs. And lastly, Mountain Shadows, we were in the business of the takeout and to go, but we are not now, and we're reevaluating that as we go. We do it on the golf course, and that's kind of the extent of it.
Well, I have to say I'm glad about the Valley Ho, because those desserts that you make, I don't know if somebody wants to Google online, look at the desserts that these guys make at Valley Ho. It's crazy. I mean, crazy looking. They're fascinating. Those shakes and whatever they are. Okay. Anyhow, Jeff, sorry to talk about milkshakes. Let's talk about model homes. How is it going? What does it feel like at Toll Brothers right now? And what's the opportunity that you're seeing?
You know, Jordan, this week is actually a great week compared to last week. We had a 50% increase in sales. So what that means is we went from 2 to 3. So big increase, you know, kind of easy. But, you know, realistically, that's about 15 to 20% of where we should be this time of year. Talking to the rest of my builder friends, we're all in the same boat. So, you know, with construction being deemed a essential business, the guys in the field haven't really slowed down. Their life hasn't changed. The big struggle has been getting people in the sales offices. So we all remain open for sale. We're specifically open by appointment only. So our salespeople show up every day. The door is locked. People can come, you know, schedule an appointment for the next day or further out in the future. And then that's how we're selling homes. We've been experimenting. We actually, one of our sales this last week was a first for us. It was a completely virtual sale. So everything was shown through video, through text message, FaceTiming. They showed them the video. We're trying to work through, the legalities of that and somebody actually visiting a property versus not visiting a property, but we're figuring out new ways to sell homes. And it's the struggle of how do we get people out to the communities so we can keep selling? How to get that confidence there?
I appreciate that. What, in terms of actual visits to sales offices, is it just a zero deal? Like it's not happening or anything like that at this point?
I'm assuming you're meaning somebody just driving to the sales office and walking in?
Yeah.
Zero deal for us. And if my understanding is most builders are that way, there might be one or two that aren't, but you cannot get in the same day. Even if you called up right now and said, hey, can I get in this afternoon? Our deal is it's next day. And the people that are serious, that are real buyers, aren't having any issues with it. They're more than happy to schedule an appointment, come out. And because of that, the conversion rate's fantastic right now. Somebody comes out to look at a home, there's pretty good chance they're buying a house. It's wonderful. We just don't get enough of them out.
Well, thank you for that. All right, Court, you want to ask Michael a question here, because Court is actually a member of the entrepreneurial organization Gen Next, and so and all that they do is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. I'll take it. So, Michael, thanks for being here. I know I see a few of our members are actually on the call, but I'm not sure that everybody knows what Gen Next is. So I'll let you say real quick what it is. But I'm wondering, you've kind of got a front line on, you're in the world of philanthropy, you're in the world of business, politics is a big part of the organization and what you do. What are you seeing out there and the challenges in those three distinct areas, and are there opportunities out there as well?
Yeah. Wow. Well, first of all, Jordan and Court and all of you, thank you. I think it's super important to stay informed and connected in this period of time. Apologies in advance if you hear any one of my 4 kids in the background. You're in my home right now, so welcome. I think zooming out, my context with Gen X is, we're really a modern institution that's trying to engage and develop the perspectives of influential people in society, because we believe that leaders in society are the builders of values and opportunity and really set direction. And so we try to support our members in doing that. As a result, it puts us up close to different business sectors, philanthropy, a whole range of issues, politics. And so quickly, I think my sense is there's 2 fundamental immediate questions. But to me, those aren't the big question. I know that dominating most people's mind are more what's going to happen with the public health crisis. I'm in California, and so I'm experiencing a lot more of the shelter at home, lockdown, do not walk around than I think a lot of Arizonans are. And it's even worse in New York. But there's a lot of things we still don't know about the virus. We know that the curve is somewhat flattening. We don't know to what extent that is a result of the shelter at home in a lot of the major metropolitan areas. We don't know about immunity yet. If you get the virus, are you going to be immune? And so you're starting to see, while it has been reported that China has flattened the curve, you're starting to see a little bit of a revival because people are starting to travel back in. So we don't know about immunity. We don't know about contagion. We don't know a lot about testing. And we don't know a lot about the vaccine. We think that might be a year and a half out. And so when you take a combination of unknowns and we get optimistic about going back to work, it is very probable that the re-entry, the getting back to work is going to be more of a yo-yo until at least one of those variables of testing, tracing, treatment, or vaccine is going to breaks. And we don't know if that's going to be the case. I think that's relevant to Arizonans because that means that people aren't going to travel. And there is going to be a little bit of an apprehension, and you're going to see less faith in the market. In terms of the market itself, that's going to clash with the public health dynamic because they're going to have a lot of anxiety about getting back to work across the board, especially if you do business outside, or if you have most people do not just do business in their locality, they're affected by outside forces. And so that's going to be a factor. And the CARE Act, as we're seeing, is insufficient. It's already ran out of funds, and the Senate was going to reload, and they didn't make it. They broke, and so they're going to go back on Monday. So in other words, there's anxiety, there's uncertainty, and that is going to, I think, extend, and this is the bigger point that I was going to make, it's going to extend a bit of an identity crisis of all human beings. I think the longer that you're stuck at home and wondering where to put your kids, the more that you're close to the way your kids are educated, the more that you're thinking about your business but not able to really work on your business, the more that you don't know if you're going to be able to compete, you start to really wonder what you believe in. You start to really wonder what information is feeding your point of view, and you start to wonder who your friends are. And so people, I think, are going to increasingly strongly desire purpose, connection, and by that I mean community and information. And so the longer that the public health and economic issues clash, it's going to clash with this identity thing. And so then the real question is going to be what's different on the other side over the course of the next 2 years. Is there going to be a civic renewal that affects institutions? And that's going to start to change. The more that we change as individuals, the more we're going to start to change education. Regulations, we're starting to see that we've had silly regulations on the books that we're willing to just let go in a crisis. So are they going to be introduced? The way people conduct business is probably going to be more culture and value forward. And I'll close with this, because I don't think it's just an abstract question. I think it's something that speaks directly to everybody's day-to-day as a parent or in a business. You have Edelman did their trust barometer in the middle of all of this. And I want to give you a couple quick stats that really reinforce this idea of your day job is going to correlate to what type of institutions you build and what type of stability you give to your day job. 3/4 of people check coronavirus news daily. 3/4 of people don't trust the information they're getting daily. 2/3 of people believe that it's all being politicized. And in that environment of haze, they're going to their employers. About 2/3 are wanting their employers to act, and they trust their employers only second to public health officials. And 80% expect their 79% expect their employers to take action. So if anybody's operating in the marketplace, your employees are going to expect you to be purposeful and informed. And that's going to change the way you lead your companies, and it's going to change the way you interact with politicians. And so I would encourage you really use this time as a blessing to figure out how you orient yourself in that new competitive landscape. I'll shut up with that.
Thank you, Michael.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you for that. That's great. I want to talk to everybody about, what's going to be different and in your particular areas of business in a second. But first, Michael said something that I'm going to go to Dan Gauthier with our law firm on, and that was the PPP program is out of money. What's up with that? And then in terms of the advice that you've been giving to companies, how can you use that money, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so thanks, Jordan, and yeah, as Michael mentioned, this has been an interesting week. Finishing here with maybe some more news this afternoon from the state level, but from the federal level, as of yesterday morning, most of you have probably seen this news nationally reported, but for those of you that haven't, I'll just glaze over it. The SBA sent out a message to all of its lenders yesterday morning, essentially saying that, we're out of money. By mid-morning yesterday, the full $349 billion was allocated in PPP loan applications. So, the question that I get or have been getting from clients since yesterday is, what does that mean? Number one. Number two, if I have a pending application, am I out of luck? Or three, if I haven't applied yet, should I still apply? And I guess, what does that mean if I do apply and there's no funds appropriated? The answer to I guess I'll start with the last one is undoubtedly, yes, you should still apply. The Senate has not been able to come up with a package to appropriate additional funds into the program, but the expectation is that they will. It's just a matter of time, so when that does happen, optimistically speaking, if you own a small business and haven't applied yet for a PPP loan, you should be in that queue. You need to be in that queue. Sort of as to your second part of the question, Jordan, I think that a lot of the businesses that I've been talking to, and business owners specifically, have been really narrowed in on the forgiveness piece of this PPP loan. And I think that that's right. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I've been encouraging my clients, and I would encourage those to listening to this call to think about this in the broader at least the PPP loan, in a broader context, in that it's a very, very low interest loan. It's probably the cheapest money that a small business will see, at least in this climate. You're seeing a 2-year loan at 1% interest rate, and deferred payments for 6 months are the basic facts here. And the reality is that there are some cases, probably more than you would think of, where it doesn't make sense, or it's not feasible for the small business to go and get all of that money forgiven. Maybe they've reduced staff since they had since they were able, essentially they had an inflated payroll cost, so they got more money than their payroll money, their weekly payroll now carries. And so there are some really important considerations, just as the loan in general, as this being, working operating cash for the foreseeable future. I think that's important to keep in mind as well.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. It is ever changing. And again, Dan's not giving you legal advice, just so we're clear, but he certainly can, but he's not, just so we're clear. Okay, Jeff, I wanted to talk to you about how is Toll thinking about home buyer sentiment when this comes back in terms of product, pricing, opportunity, those kinds of things?
Good question. When you mentioned just a minute ago, Jordan, about how are things be different in the future, I wrote a few things down, and it hit those. One of the things we're thinking about, what we've actually been thinking about since we came out of the last recession, is how do we gain more market share? So as anybody that's kind of paid attention to us recently knows, we've diversified quite a bit. Historically, very high-end homes. We're known for the $2-3 million homes in North Scottsdale, Fountain Hills, what have you. But we introduced a more affordable product line down in Queen Creek. It's in the 3s. So we've expanded that product line. We have 1,600 lots now for that, and we're going to continue to drive that. So as people come out, we can tap into that first move up, second move up market. The other thing, we've got a lifestyle community. Everybody's probably familiar with our Sterling Grove project out in Surprise. 2,000 lots, golf course, what have you. People want to be around amenities and be around things that they can have. That's always going to be there. The other question we've just been considering the last few weeks is, what are homes going to look like coming out of this? The way we're living right now is significantly different than it was 45 days ago. Everybody's working from home. Maybe you had a home office, but do we all have 2 home offices? Do we have a place for the kids to do online school at home? We all have open floor plans now. That's what everybody wants. I remodeled my house 2 years ago to take out a bunch of walls to have a big open floor plan. Mm-hmm. Not working really great right now with the kids doing online school in the middle of the house. So do homes get slightly more closed off again? We don't know. These are conversations we're having of what are people going to want coming out of this? Are we going to live differently? I think it is going to be different. We're just not sure what that is. The other thing we're looking at right now is, how do we grow? We've got a green light to buy land. So if the right opportunity comes up, we've got that option. What does that look like between now and 90 days or 180 days from now? We're not sure, but we're looking, and we want to expand coming out of this.
That's great, because I see on the 350 or so people here that there are a bunch of land sellers. So I think you're going to be inundated with that now, Jeff. So be careful what you say. Bill, and then I'll go to the doctor about some things that you're thinking about, in terms of what we can all be doing and what you're doing for your family. But Bill, what do you think what does what does the hospitality industry look like when this comes back?
We're trying to find things that are going to stick, is what it's all about. The hospitality business and resorts in particular the lodging component, meaning heads and beds, is something, as you discussed earlier with me, hasn't stopped. But what has stopped are all the ancillary services, really the reasons that I think people identify with a sanctuary or a Valley Ho or even a Mountain Shadows, and that's the fact that we're a kind of a locally driven hotel mentality. We're kind of a neighborhood resort for the nation, if you will. In other words, our restaurants come first. The spa, that's an area that we're completely, at odds with this, 6-foot distancing kind of scenario. So we're looking at basically turning the spa away from what I would call the traditional the massages and the scrubs to more of a wellness type environment, and helping people understand how they can not only stay well, but be better at their lifestyle, that sort of thing. And golf, you referenced, tennis, we're still playing some tennis, pickleball, but for the most part, a piece of our business that we would very much attract here in terms of Arizona were the big groups and conventions. And that kind of flies in the face of what we're going through right now as far as distancing. So we're trying to figure out ways to attract the individual guests. I think it's going to be a trickle at first. People aren't going to feel confident in traveling, especially on an airplane. And sanitation will be at the foundation of our reputation. I think there's going to be protocols that we'll get certifications for, and I think the guest of the future is going to rely on expertise that goes beyond ours to certify the protocols that we're delivering from a pure sanitation perspective, whether it's in the guest room, the restaurant, or the public areas of the hotel, are going to have to pass the test, if you will.
Well, we appreciate that too, because interestingly enough, we've been working for a lot of the folks on the call here today, but we were working specifically for Goodwill Industries. It's the largest Goodwill in the United States here in Arizona, and saw that, while the governor was kind enough to issue an essential services order that allowed their employment centers and retail to stay open, we started thinking, well, but what if the consumer doesn't come back? They need some assurance that they're doing the right thing, that they're keeping it as cleanly as possible, and that their staff knows what they're doing. So we started a company a couple of weeks ago called Healthy Verify Certification, which goes through and provides a protocol for every different types of businesses. We're doing event centers, we're doing real estate businesses, we're doing nonprofits, we're doing offices, whatever, and working with doctors and the advice from Arizona State University and some others to provide a protocol, and then they help to implement the protocol, and then they go and certify that the protocol is being followed, which they can display on their sales offices or whatever, in order to give some sort of assurance to that business and to the public that they can come back in and be safe as possible. So so that's exactly what needs to happen. The public confidence needs to be there, right? So doctor, let's talk about, what are you doing? You've got some unique ideas and what you're doing for your family, and what suggestions you might have to the people on the call.
So my family is staying home right now. I have 2 boys, and my husband is also a physician. He works in a different hospital. So he's truly frontline, because he does see patients come to the emergency room and is actively taking care of COVID-19 patients who are sick and who are in the hospital. And on a brighter side, on a silver lining, his hospital was, I think, one of the first hospitals in the world to have a patient in the intensive care unit on a machine called ECMO, who recovered and is on his way, recovered and out of the machine and not on a breathing machine anymore, and on the path of recovery. So that's good news. So there's some good news there, but there are a lot of patients who are coming in very, very sick, very, very sick. So for my family is staying home. My husband and I have a ritual where we go to the hospital in our scrubs. When we come back, We have a spot in the garage where we literally strip down. We take our sanitizer bottle, we push the doors with our shoulders, go straight to the shower, come back, load all the clothes in the in the washer, sanitize the whole area, and then hug our kids. So that's number one. Hand washing. We have a mask that we wear when we drive. It's not a medical grade mask, but when I see my patients, I have a surgical mask. And when I see my patients specifically for suspicious COVID-related infections, it's the full gear that you see on TV, like the PPE and mask. So that basically, and I have seen a lot of patients on visual meetings, so like Zoom-like meetings, and it's fantastic to connect with my patients who are just needing some advice, who are just needing some reassurance. I mean, a significant increase in anxiety, understandably anxiety and depression and sleep disorders significantly compared to even February. If you look at the graph, the use of medications have increased in the last 30 to 45 days. And we all can understand why that would be. So there is a significant degree of anxiety and depression. In fact, I was looking at the statistics today. The number of calls made for domestic violence have increased by about, I think, 500 compared to February. So it's not just the COVID infection. There's a lot of other medical problems that we're dealing with. So that's what I'm looking at. And as of April 9th, COVID-19 is the #1 killer in the United States. So based on statistics, if you compare that with heart disease and cancers, as of now, that is the #1 killer.
Doctor, you were talking to me about herd mentality, herd immunity, and talk to us about that, because I know we've had differences of opinion over the last few weeks from doctors that have been on here saying, yes, you want to get this now, if it's, as long as it's mild, go out and be in the world a little more, and some saying absolutely not, stay in your house, you're crazy, don't do that at all. And I just wanted to get your feedback on that.
So the reason you hear so many controversial statements is because we don't know all that we need to know about this virus. There are very few studies, there are very limited data for all the doctors and medical providers to sort of get through this period. But here's what I can tell you. What we know works is social distancing does work. And the way that works is, that doesn't mean that people who are staying home will not be infected or will not infected. That just means that people who are infected are not infecting other people who could potentially get very sick and land up in the hospital all at the same time. So when we talk about that curve, when you look at the peak of the curve is where a lot of really, really sick people are fighting for their life in the intensive care units. And we do not have that many ICU beds and that many breathing machines if we had a flood of people coming at the same time. What herd immunity essentially means is, let's just imagine all of us on this panel are actually in an actual room, and I cough on you and you guys don't wash your hands and you inhale the virus, right? Most of you will be fine. Most of you in a period of time will develop antibodies, meaning soldiers, and will fight this infection and will have natural immunity. But some of you will get really, really sick and land up in the hospital and may not survive. Now, imagine if we all went out and started coughing and sneezing and touching and getting people sick, our loved ones over the age of 65 or people who are immunosuppressed. We will have a surge of very sick people that we will not be able to provide adequate care, adequate capacity in the hospital, and that's what the medical community is worried about. So one way to think about this is, if we had a test to evaluate who has immunity and who doesn't, and if we could do that and determine there are many people who are immune as of now, that would give us some reassurance. And the obstacle with that, Jordan, is right now, we do not have reliable way of testing. So even the test that we have, if you talk to the infectious disease doctors, they can't say with certainty that they can rely on some of these testing. So we need reliable mass testing that will evaluate for immunity to this virus. Because we know we don't have a vaccine, we don't have treatments, all treatments are under investigation. We don't have enough data. So I think those are some of the obstacles I see.
Thank you. Court, you got some
Yeah, I got
questions.
a few
And please
questions.
keep sending questions in the chat too.
I'll jump in real quick. So Michael, I know, Gen Next has chapters in Seattle, New York City, LA, San Francisco. We don't have one in Wuhan, but like those are like the hot spots in the country pretty much. That's obviously been a challenge for your business, and you've had to do some things to create what kind of things are you doing, and what do you think other businesses that are in similar situations, we're all in these situations, can learn from that, and maybe there's other creative ideas that are out there?
Oh, good question. That's interesting because we actually have a member from Wuhan. Go figure. So, and he has pretty interesting perspective based off of his family and his ties there. But I think again, I'm always the guy to sort of go purpose first. Simon Sinek, start with why. I think a lot of the pivots, and I'll comment on some of those, but I think a lot of the pivots are that you really need to adopt a mindset that it's not going to be normal, that we keep benchmarking ourselves to how it was. And the greatest points in American history have always been a result of reinvention, every single time. So unless we wrap our heads around how we're reinventing ourselves based off of a construct of values, is really going to translate to how we're going to be. And again, I think it is going to everything from our relationship with China to how we educate our kids to how we're designing our homes is going to be different. And so that's going to suffuse everything that we do. To specifically to your question of some of how people are adapting, I think on the ground, again, you're gonna have an expectation that business leaders and companies are very clear about what they stand for and how they're active in their communities, how they're paying attention to issues at large. In a business sector, it's been interesting to see the shift to local banks, even with the CARES Act. I think Wells Fargo even missed their window. Bank of America had a lot of mishaps, but if you were at a community bank, you probably did better. And so that's something that people are going to have a tighter connection when the trend was away from that. I think the way people glean information and get information, hopefully you'll see a revival in philanthropy, the Rotaries of the world and community organizations of ways to stay connected and stay informed. I think people are going to have a new interest in just what can I contribute and how do I help. I think that's going to probably check into the DNA. And then I think politicians are going to be expected to be quite a bit more authentic and relational, because they've had to figure out how to really reinvent themselves and communicate their brands. Those are some sort of top line how things I think are changing, and businesses are so for us, we're doubling down on exactly these things. We provide insight and information. The experience has always been designed to do that because we think it makes society better if you're informed. And we've doubled down on being a formative institution that facilitates depth and connection in certain types of people. And so we've really made that pivot. And I think any one of whether you're in hospitality and you're utterly crushed, you're going to be thinking a lot about the relationships that you have with your guests in a much more holistic way as you try to re-enter. Or if you're in another, or you run a nonprofit, you're going to think of your supporters not as donors, but as a relationship. And so it's got to be a mindset shift across the board. But even when you look at sort of innovations, like there'll probably be new innovations in agriculture, because you're going to think about health and food security. You're going to see new innovations in education and how we're adopting our kids in remote working. And I think there'll probably be new niche opportunities in travel and hospitality, but all that's going to be very values-driven pivots. And I think just to really stress how we think about how we embrace the idea that this is an opportunity to do and be different is going to correlate to the type of new economy that's going to exist in 25 years. It's going to be directly follows the civic life that we have in 25 years.
That's interesting. I would agree. I mean, there's a lot of different groups that I'm involved in, including at our office, where I feel like that, just looking at how we communicate and interact, we're almost seeing and talking to each other more, because we've started using Zoom, and and this experience here every week is a great opportunity to interact with people that you just wouldn't see regularly. So there's definitely different things that are happening for the better. Hey, Jeff, I got a question for you. I'm curious, relative to other markets around the country, is there, do we have more optimism or a different set of circumstances here in Arizona that makes you feel like we're, better or worse positioned to come out of this from the home building standpoint?
My opinion is we're better. And I can only speak to us, from a toll standpoint, because that's the market I look at, here locally, but I also get a national perspective on. You think about what we've got here in Arizona, the trends, we've got great weather. I mean, even what Bill said earlier about, he's got people staying with him indefinitely just because of the great weather. But specifically what that means right now, there are many states, Washington, Pennsylvania, New York, construction's not an essential service, so nothing's happening in those states. So we've got a leg up on that, first off. Second off, people want to be here. It's the same thing we've been saying the last 20 years. We've got great weather. We're very affordable. Our economy is significantly more diverse today than it was 10, 15 years ago. Coming out of the last downturn, especially what Governor Ducey's done, has been great to diversify our economy. That helps us out, creates more jobs. And, the tourism helps us as well, because it gets people to our, to us to see what we're doing. And that's what we try to play with. If anybody's been to any of our model homes, we're trying to capture that resort and put it in the backyard. And so somebody feels like they're on vacation. And we've done a good job of that. I look at other parts of the country within toll, and I know every home builder's doing the same analysis as that we're doing currently. It's how much money do we need to spend today to keep our communities going at a respectable pace, but how much cash can we hold on for the future? Because we don't know how long this is going to go on. And we also want to make sure we're ready, so as we're coming out of this, we can buy and position ourselves well for the next market. We are getting a disproportionate share of toll's capital here in Arizona compared to the rest of the country. So that's telling me that even our key corporate executives believe Arizona is the right place to be coming out of this.
Thanks for that, Jeff. Do you think, in terms of the opportunity that you see for purchase of land right now, how is toll looking at that in allocating you resources? Is it hey, we're gonna look at stuff, but we'll delay closings for hundreds of days, or is it sort of more immediate, or how is that looking?
No, different than both of those. It's definitely not immediate. One of the benefits we have right now is we actually don't need land for business plan for about 3.5 years. So we're covered, and that was business plan prior to this. So we probably got more than that, but we see this as a great opportunity to buy land that needs work done on it. Entitlements, engineering, stuff that takes a year, 18 months, 2 years to begin with. We'll be out of this in 2 years. So we want something that's going to set us up for a future position, not something that we need. We don't need starts in 90 days for closings this year. So it's a long-term play for us.
Thanks. Bill, I just wanted to go back, because now I'm in sort of a depression about no massages or anything. I hadn't really contemplated the gravity of that situation. But so you're modifying the spa experience. You're really going to create that, I suppose, for the future. Kind of like what Michael said, we're going to morph into things that we hadn't contemplated. The golf experience, how you've changed that a bit so that there is no contact. Talk a little bit more about your thoughts, and you've always been a visionary in all of the experiences you've created throughout the years, and what is it looking like it's shaping up in your mind right now?
Sure. With that in mind, vision is everything, and in this case, hindsight is 20/20, and what I mean by that is not to make fun of it, but we started seeing that the traveler, if you will, our guest, was really more interested in experiential experiences. So not necessarily being in a small room, being taken care of with a massage for 50 or 60 minutes, but they were interested in getting out and discovering Camelback Mountain. They were interested in getting out towards Castle Hot Springs and experiencing culture and what I would call the identity of the environment. So we luckily began moving in that direction several years ago. And I guess the good news in our world is we're small. We've always individualized the guest experience. Where I think our industry is going to be challenged. And with that in mind, I don't want to be the visionary on this side of the ledger, but I mean, tourism is our biggest industry. 25 billion, I believe, is where we sit on an annualized basis in 2019 that attached to tourism. But I think we're going to have to be more individual in our thinking. The big convention center, is it going to take time to get groups of hundreds and hundreds of people to meet in one big meeting? So all that being said, we're going to focus on the individual, connect with our past guests first, who trust us. I mentioned earlier, I think we're going to be selling a safe and healthy environment more than anything first. The frills and the things that kind of came along with the experience before are going to take time to gain traction. Even the restaurant, we're going to have to distance tables and probably serve less guests, but hopefully do it better and do it in a way that that regains confidence in our market.
I appreciate that. And I know even at Mountain Shadows, you put that styrofoam in the hole so you can't actually putt in. And you did that like right away. I mean, that was I know way too much about this because I'm trying to keep my kids occupied. So sorry, I'm your biggest golf fan. Dr. Haerter, can I ask you a question about drinking hot liquids? We talked about this and I just wanted you to convey what you told me.
So obviously this is not supported by big studies or data, but there is some small study done in India that shows that because of the temperature of the liquid, that there is a possibility that the virus that stays in our upper respiratory tract, or because we inhale the virus, that it could affect the viability of the virus. Now, this is not something that's proven by science. We don't have big studies. We don't have any big data on this. But my whole point on that is if you like tea and if you like hot tea, this is a good time to sip on some tea, because if there is some validity to that, that might actually help help us with this virus. But again, this is not a treatment. This is not how you get rid of infection. This is not a big study. So I hate to say that this is sort of like a big deal, but I love tea and I've been sipping on it 3 to 4 times a day.
And this can justify your caffeine habit. So a doctor just told you can keep drinking coffee and tea. So we appreciate that. I appreciate that from a hot green tea drinker. Addicted to hot green tea and caffeine. Okay, Dan, let me just ask you a question on that I see here privately. What else are businesses thinking about with respect to the stimulus package?
So small businesses are the primary ones that I've been talking to on a day-to-day basis, those that have between 20 and, say 100 employees or even less than 20. And I guess one of the really interesting things that I've been, thinking through is particularly when you have employees that you might have had to lay off over the last couple of months, and those employees are hourly employees, maybe in the service industry, earning less than, say around $15 an hour or so. And businesses need to think through, again, not legal advice, but generally speaking, think through what the employees that have been laid off and those that have gone and applied for unemployment in record numbers, by the way, more than record numbers if that's possible. They're going to be receiving what equates to, at least in Arizona, based on the Arizona maxes, something like $21 an hour through right now, the end of June, possibly extended. So think about what that means for when we go back to work, and or when they go back to work, or should be, and maybe they can get rehired by the same company or a different business. And what does that mean if they were earning $15 an hour, $16 an hour before, and they're getting $21 an hour to sit safely in their home and quarantine? And what does that mean for our service industry and for our community and for those people that are working at restaurants and places like that? That's one thing that, you know, I don't have a solution, but I think it's an important thing to think through.
That's really interesting. And actually, I mean, the role of government is a big part of this. It's been a big subject in the country lately. You know, do we want more government, less government? And I think there's great cases to be made, you know, for this on both sides, right? The government failed us, that's why we're in this situation, or the government's keeping us safe, and that's why, you know, we flatten the curve. Michael, do you have a sense, you know, you interact with you know, political leadership at the highest levels all the time. You know, where do you think it's going? You know, is this going to be a blame the government and it'll push us away from this move towards, you know, populism and socialism, or is this you know, now we need the government more than other times kind of result?
Yeah, I want to sort of qualify my commentary by just saying we don't know because of how little we know about the virus at this point, and you know, it could be that we go back to work and it's totally fine, and well, it's totally fine if there's I think, again, if you're looking at things quite a bit differently, but that we're not under threat to have to quarantine again in the fall, or quarantine again in the spring, or even just do phased quarantine or phased shelter at home. Because even if you say, all right, well, anything that is going to allow space, so restaurants will have to think differently about keeping people distant from one another. Large sports gatherings won't happen. That's still going to change the way people are entertained at home. So there's still going to be these questions that all are determined by the virus. So I want to qualify that. But I think the big question, Court, that you're asking is how is our sort of social compact changing? And that's gonna lead to a lot of questions about, yes, capitalism, socialism. You're gonna have a lot of issues around the haves and the have-nots. Because, you know, even just take testing right now is spreading. Well, you could get a test if you have money, but if you're in a rural area or you're in an urban area, you're going to struggle. I don't know the exact number. It might be 25 million Americans don't have access to internet. You know, what in the world are they doing right now? And so you're going to see a lot of those divisions. And so there's going to be a raging debate about the intellectual framework, the philosophical framework that's going to create opportunity and close the divide. And so is it going to be populism and division and wealth redistribution? You know, or is it going to be, you know, localized competitiveness, you know, lighter footprint of government? And it is a mixed bag on government specifically. If you take, I'm in California, and all the debates about the gig economy and gig workers, I think those types of debates are going to be quite a bit different now, and they'll be revisited because you're going to have more about appreciation for that type of control and mobility. However, government, you know, that Ronald Reagan said one of the worst lines of the English language is, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Well, right now, that's all that people are thinking of is how's the government at any level going to help me? So it is going to be a mixed bag. I think you're going to have some sort of freedom introducing ideas of less regulation, more mobility, more autonomy, but you're going to have other areas where you see a lot more dependence on the government and policy. But I want to double down on a point that I don't think it's just going to come down to sort of how are entrepreneurs reinventing themselves, which is important. And I don't think it's just going to come down to how are politicians positioning and what is going to be public policy. I think it is going to be a lot more of, is this a period of time of civic renewal? Because that's going to translate to what are coalitions in the parties? What are politicians going to talk about, and how are business people organizing themselves and responding to market opportunities? It's going to be heavy on civic life, which is not sexy. Well, I think it is, but a lot of people don't. And that's not usually where the narrative and conversations go with most people day to day. But I think the more that those conversations happen, the better we're going to improve.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to ask Jeff a quick question, and then I want to go around the horn to kind of close it off, and then we have a special surprise at the end here, so don't get off the Zoom yet. The round the horn is going to be, what do you miss most? What do you miss least? So think about that. Jeff, a question. Do you think this virus situation causes people to want to rent over purchase homes more, or do you have any sense of that future forward look for home buyers versus renters?
I don't have any sense other than just what, my gut feel is. In the short term, I think rent is, people have to move, they're going to rent. They're not going to buy in the short term just because they're uncertain of the economy. Long term, I think it goes towards own. If you can have a nice sanctuary, people are really going to think about what they use their homes for going forward and how they want to be equipped. And then we mentioned a little bit earlier about home design. Maybe that changes a little bit, but I think home is different today than it was 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. It really is. So I think people want to have that. So I think long-term home building, it's going to be a great business. People are going to want to do it. Phoenix is always going to be a great place to be. So I think we're fine. But short-term, I think it probably does lean a little bit towards rental.
Thank you. Okay, doctor, let's go around the horn. What do you miss the most? What do you miss the least?
I think what I miss, really, Jordan, is seeing my patients in person. I really do. I think there is a place for telemedicine, especially for my patients who come from, rural areas or have transportation issues. I think that's a great option. But I'm so old school. The ritual of seeing someone in person and talking to them and listening to them and spending that time gives me a lot more information than simply checking somebody on a screen and giving them advice. I think there is so much value to holding hands, hugging, not doing that anytime soon, but I'm just saying that when we do, there's a lot of reassurance. And I always say reassurance is part of my treatment. It should be. There's a lot of anxiety and fear, and there's real fear and sometimes, fear that comes from just news that is not true. And I feel like I miss that. I really do miss that. I miss meeting my friends in person and holding them and hugging them.
Well, we're looking forward to a hug too. All right, Bill, what do you miss the most? What do you miss the least?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to default back to the people side of existence. I mean, as they say, we're a gregarious animal, and in our business, it's all about the people, whether it's our guests, our staff, those that we do vendor business, etc. So I miss the people side of it all. The least, I don't mind being able to make it from my office to my home in less than 5 minutes. There's no traffic on the road. Thanks.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
The commute has definitely shortened to the backyard guest house. Jeff, what do you miss the most? What do you miss the least?
I miss the people. I miss going to lunch, seeing the people you want to interact with, the meetings. Everybody that's on this call, right? Just getting back together. What do I miss the least? The commute and sitting in the office. Working from home has been enjoyable for me. I like it being around here, way more efficient, because I don't get the distractions, but I do miss the people.
Michael?
I love that everybody's saying they miss the people. So I would say that too. I think I miss the people, but I also miss being able to sort of travel and have sort of just opportunity to move around. I think that the whole idea of agency is something everybody probably misses, but I do think it is painful economically. I miss the certainty of being able to plan. I think that's important, but I do think what I won't miss is people taking the idea of purpose and direction for granted. And I think that way too often that happens and our country suffers as a result. I won't miss that. And so I think that this is a real opportunity to renew.
Dan, what do you got?
Well, I'm not going to offer anything exciting. I'll just jump on the train. I definitely miss human interaction. My gosh, it's lonely working at home, and you learn to appreciate things like this, and even conference calls and telephone calls with clients and opposing counsel. You really learn to appreciate that. So I definitely miss that the most, and probably second, sports. I'm a big sports guy, and there's no sports to watch. So or really play either, not except for golf, right? But
next week we're gonna talk a little bit more about sports. So Court, you got anything
great.
to add on the most and least?
Well, you know, we've been asking me the same question for 5 weeks, and I usually say it's yelling at you across the office. But I think this week I was looking at my calendar, and my son was supposed to have a rock climbing competition tomorrow. So I think I'm missing youth sport now. Watching my kids go do their thing is one of my favorite things, and that's off the table, and it's sad.
And I'm missing sending my kids to school, I think. All right. I can't thank you enough, panel and participants. And I'd like to kick it to the infamous DJ Peabody to bring us some joy and optimism. Thanks again. Peabody, take it away. Get off mute. Take him off mute, Wafa. All right. And if we can't do that, then let's
your emotions have an echo in so much space. And when you're out there without care, yeah, I was out of time.
See you dance.
It wasn't because I didn't know enough. I just knew too much. Does that make me crazy? Meat mix, fat ass meat mix. Let's take it back to the old school. Let's take it to Union Square. Party people, party people. DJ, party people, party people. DJ. Welcome to your life. There's no turning back. Even while we sleep, we will find you rising on the best behavior. Turn your back on Mother Nature. Everybody wants to rule the world. It's my only time. It's my only loss. Help me to decide. Help me make the most. Stop breathing and not pleasure. Running never lasts forever. Everybody wants to rule the world. There's a room where life won't find you. Only hands while the walls start tumbling down. When they do, I'll be right behind you. So gladly the road's faded. So sad it had to end it. Everybody wants to rule the Born on the radio talks about revolution when it's already passed by. Bob Dylan and that used to sing about you know it feels good to be alive. I was alive and I waited. I was alive and I waited for this. Right here, right now. There is no other place that I want to be. Right here, right now. Watching the world wake up from history. I saw the decade in which the world could change at the blink of an eye. And here right now. Watching the world wake up from history. I ain't got no money. I ain't got no car to take you on a date. I ain't gonna buy you flowers, but together we made a perfect song. Talk to me, girl. This hit that ice cold Michelle fight for that white gold. This one for them hood girls, them good girls, straight masterpieces. Styling, wildin', living it up in the city. Got Chuck's on with Saint Laurent. Gotta kiss myself, I'm so pretty. I'm too hot. Call the police and the fireman. I'm too hot. Make a dragon wanna retire, man. I'm too hot. Say my name, you know who I am. I'm too hot. And my band about that money, break it down. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Saturday night and we in the spot. Don't believe me, just watch. Don't believe me, just watch. Don't believe me, just watch.
The waves keep on crashing on me for some reason. But your love keeps on coming like a thunderbolt. Come here a little closer, 'cause I wanna see you, baby, real closer. Performance deserving of standing ovations. And who would have thought it'd be the two of